Hey guys, welcome back. This is part 2 of Sonic Academy's Kick2 Designer. So if you haven't seen part 1, just click on the link above and it'll take you there. So let's jump right into it. So here's where we're at from part 1. We covered subcontrol and we covered the diagram that we see right here, both the pitch and the amp. Now we're going to move on to the click section. Moving on to the click section, we see that we have 3 different types of clicks. They're color-coded right here, and we could also add them to the diagram view if we wish. Right now, as it is, I only have 1 click sound. I'm going to solo it. We see there's no sub, there's no energy. If I were to bring it back in, they're both together. Now, same as the subcontrol, we have the same options. We can solo, we can mute, we could phase change. Let me just bring it in the diagram. By clicking this, you can see it in the diagram. By phase changing, we see that the wave just switches 180 degrees. And we also have the option to choose key track, which will allow you to choose different notes starting from the initial note that's been tuned to, based obviously on the note you've put in the piano roll. We also have the option to choose different clicks. Well, let's go through couple of the sound banks. Let's go back to whatever it was. I believe it was in house. Sorry, it was in techno. Well, let's choose this one. This is fine. We have the volume option as well. We have a panner. Again, remember, double click brings it back to whatever the initial value was. You can load your own if you like to by clicking on it and choosing your files. And you could do this in a cool way because you could add 3 of them and have the options for each one of them to be controlled separately. We can also change the pitch of only the click by moving this. Right? This is kind of cool. It's really meaty, it's fat, it's really cool. We can reduce, we see the length of how long it is. We can reduce it by reducing this length knob. It's quite descriptive. The start pushes the file back, basically moving the start point a bit forward. You might not want the specific type of sound that you're getting at the beginning of the click, so you would want to just raise this a bit so it could just get sucked in back. And the sound of the click starts a bit later than it would. This allows you to fully control the kick sound you want out of it. You could add a low pass or a high pass on the click as well. Right, so it really allows you to jump into it in detail and really play around with all the options you have. Cool thing is, on the graph section, if we're to look at the click 1, 2, 3, in this case click 1, we have option to control the amplitude as well too. As I reduce the amplitude at the beginning part drops down. Let me put a note here and reduce it. See, just the transients dropping down. You might feel like you like the sound, you like where it starts, but overall you feel like the transient at the beginning might be a bit too heavy, so you could just kill it a bit. And you could soften the sound, or just bring a bit of aggressiveness back into it. Again, you could choose a length as well here. And so it's pretty much the same sound source options that you have. Now, moving on to this section right here, which is a built-in EQ. We could turn on the EQ bands by clicking these buttons. We have 4 bands. And what's cool is, aside from having detailed options here, you can control the knobs right here without having to go in this edit menu. So you can also use an outside EQ, a third-party EQ or Ableton's EQ, basically an EQ that's not part of this VST, if you like. So let's just quickly play around with it as well. Let's say I want a bit more lows, a bit more mids, a bit of highs. You can control it, right? As you wish. When we get out of the screen, we can control it here as well. What's cool is that you have the option of reducing the lows at any frequency that you want, or you have the option of reducing the volume of the whole sub area. the whole sub signal, in this case the sine wave, right, is written here. So that's, having that option is quite interesting, because a lot of times you don't have access to this. You only have access to dipping in EQ, which might leave you a bit limited in some cases. So moving out of the EQ screen, we have the distortion. Basically, we have different options here: clip, tube, wave. They all have different algorithms. Play around with it and see what fits best for you. Cool thing about the distortion is you can put the distorted sound only on, when this is selected, the click, C for click, or only on the sub, or on both. So let's say I were to pick the wave, 50% in the mix, not full 100%, and I increase the distortion right here. Right, so be subtle with this, because it might be unpleasant very easily. So you could go around picking the other types of distortion sounds. You could add a high pass or a low pass as well. And you have the option of adding drive to your sound, which often distorts it even further. But done with good taste, you will have a good sound. You'll have control of different elements in this process to be able to get really the kick that you're hearing in your head. Or to fix issues that you might have in your kick. Once the track's written on the kick, you go back to it and you start modifying it a bit. We have access to a compressor, which you could turn on by clicking here. You can control the gain reduction. I'm not going to go in detail in terms of compression because it gets complicated, but overall, starting with about like a 20 millisecond compressor attack and a ratio of about, like, I'll say 4 to start off with. Makeup gain based on, depending on how much you compress, how much you have gain reduction, and release about 100 millisecond is a good point. These are good parameters to start with. You don't need to really use it. You could have an additional compressor right after the chain if you like. I usually keep it closed unless there's a preset that I like, it's already on, and I modify starting from that point on, right? So this is what the compressor does. Here we have a limiter. It's automatically turned on. To activate it, you just have to re-click it so it turns blue. You can reduce the intensity of the brick wall limiter if you like. You have the output volume here. Always keep this on so you don't blow up your speakers or you don't overly distort. You have access to increase or choose the velocity percentage based on, if you were to press to launch it with a pad, depending on how hard you're pressing, you'll have different velocities. If you don't want your kicks to come statically out at the same velocity, you can turn this on, and according to the velocity that's registered in your MIDI, you'll have different volumes or intensities. In this case, the kick as the backbone needs to be very, very strong. Usually it's quantized. It's also, I'll put this velocity at 0 so to know that it's at max. So there's no velocity affecting the sound, the output of it. We have an option to slide as well. We turn it on and you lift this up. What it does is if you're in the key track mode and you have 2 different notes in the kick, leading up from one to the other, it kind of goes up or goes down. I would never see a use necessarily for this type of music, but you might maybe use it more in trap or different types of electronic music according to what you're trying to do, right? We have options here to choose snap. What snap does, well, before snap I'll talk about gate. What gate does is, if gate's turned on and if your note here is a bit shorter, the note will stop being triggered and the sound won't carry through all the way to the end. So the signal will cut halfway to whatever length you have your note placed in. I usually turn it off because I know I don't want to do that. I just want the kick to keep on hitting all across equally. Snap basically snaps your ability to move from note to note precisely, because the G1 could be 49 hertz, 50, 51, and there's a crossover, let's say at 52, right? So what note is between 52 hertz and 49 hertz, right? If you remove snap, you're able to explore the in-between frequencies. I wouldn't necessarily want to do that. I want my G on point, so I'll leave it at 49, let's say. And tags basically remove the tags off the nodes, the information you have. You click these to turn them off if you like. And yeah, that's about it. If you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me through email, through the messages below. And it's all about knowing and understanding the VSTs you're using to be able to apply it to your work properly. Don't just always settle for presets. You can at the beginning, but always understand what do these other options do. They're there for a reason. Learn to use them. You might not use them on the long run, on some occasions, but on the long run, you will find uses for it depending on what you're doing. So that's pretty much it. Any questions or comments, as always, just leave them in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next time.